Welcome to episode 122 of the Omnigamers Club podcast, the podcast for games on all platforms, including Tamagotchi. I am Daniel Winter.
Hello, and my name is Mark Uesa. How are you doing, Daniel?
Excellent, thank you. I just took the kid into our friendly local game store today to check out their library. It's fun to try a couple of new things, add a couple potentially to Santa's shopping list for the year. So that was some good fun. Introduced her to one of our favorite noodle spots that you and I have enjoyed a few times as well.
Yes, you're mentioning Marugame Udon, which is the Japanese udon chain, which is very popular in my household and pretty authentic udon. So glad it's opened up in town.
I've been asked to try to emulate those at home, so I'm not sure what my chances are there.
I mean, you'll be able to do the broth. It's pretty simple. You can even do the tempura, but the noodles, you just got to make them from scratch.
Hey, a 6-year-old won't know the difference with just buying pre-bought noodles, I'm sure.
I guess. Although my wife has made some handmade udon noodles and they come out, they're just a world apart.
You can't really beat fresh, but it'll get you. It's a lot of time and effort to get the good stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. Anyway,
there you go.
Lots to talk about today. We've got 3 courses of games to discuss. So, Mark, shall we start off with our appetizer for today?
Yeah, for sure. I haven't brought up a lot of news of late. You know, there's so much going on in the world, and I won't belabor the point, but happy No Kings Week. Great to see some stuff going on there. I'm just going to shout out a couple of bits of actual news because I've kind of had my eye on retro handhelds. You know that I have some of my own. I have at least 5 or 6 kicking around. But I haven't really kept my eye on new ones because, I have the ones that play when I need to. But a couple have caught my eye, just kind of because they fit a couple of niches. So one of them is from old stalwart Anbernic, which makes the 35XX SP, which you and I both own, the clamshell. This time they're coming out with another clamshell, but it's called the RGDS. So as you can imagine, this is a dual screen device. That's kind of like the final frontier or the latest frontier of the retro handheld market. But this one promises to be the first kind of affordable dual screen device. And Anbernic kind of in the past has really kind of hit the good price point. They have some higher end devices, but most of them are low to kind of like medium strength, medium power, and generally the hardware is good, the software is good. So kind of they're the vanilla. They're the Coca-Cola of the handheld market for a reason. So if I were to want to get a high-end dual screen game device, that would probably be the one I would check out first. So this is not available yet to pre-order, but I think they're going to be announcing that soon. So it might even be up by the time this episode goes out. I'm going to roll into my second announcement right away. Is another popular hardware maker, Miyoo, Miyoo, who makes another clamshell device that I like quite a bit. This is the what is this called? The Miyoo Mini, the Miyoo Flip 2. Which I like quite a lot. I generally like the Miyoo software. The devices are really nice. Just kind of like slightly nicer than the Anbernic devices that I've seen. And they're coming out with a device that kind of melds two that I like really a lot. The Flip, as you can see there, and the Miyoo Mini. I actually own the Miyoo Mini. It's like a 3-inch screen. But, high resolution, the Onion OS is the best OS I've had the opportunity to play with on some of these retro handhelds. And so the device they're coming out with is called the Miyoo Mini Flip. So as if that wasn't confusing enough, it perfectly blends those things. And Miyoo Mini is like a incredibly popular device that they discontinued for some reason. And the reason is because they're saving up all their new screens to go into this new form factor. So it'll essentially be a clamshell like this, like the Miyoo Flip 2 or the RG35XX SP size, but maybe like 2/3 of this size, which will be even smaller and cuter and even more pocketable. So if you haven't gotten a clamshell before, I highly recommend the Miyoo devices. Um, Miyoo Flip, the original, had a little bit of controversy because the hinge was not so strong, but I'm confident that they've made extra efforts with this one. And there's a couple of preview videos out there, and I believe the pre-sales are going out tonight, so would most certainly be out by the time any of you are listening to this podcast.
Yeah, the companies producing these devices aren't exactly the best at marketing and how these names all kind of blur together. They don't. There's not exactly a strong differentiation between all of the different versions of this, other than what sounds like largely code names and like serial numbers. Essentially, the
Excuse me,
35 XP SS whatever it is called that I've got.
have you heard of this device called the new Nintendo 3DS
Well, yeah,
before, or the
the Xbox
DSLI
One.
XL? Yeah, I think like some of those Nintendo handhelds, the cool thing about these retro devices is that they're iterative, and I think the naming conventions kind of fly out the door because of that reason. But there's something exciting about an industry that is actually iterative and affordable. You could argue that the flip side is that a lot of people are just buying the devices to fill shelves or fill their drawers.
How many
And
do you
there
have again,
aren't.
Mark?
Well, I have at least five, but I've gotten rid of a couple.
Right.
And I know firsthand that the Miyoo devices are quite good because I've gifted some of them. I gifted my two Miyoo devices to my cousins in Japan when I visited them. So I know that they're rock solid. So I and I have a Miyoo device. That's my kind of daily driver right now. So I like them quite a bit. So I'm excited about the Miyoo Mini Flip.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily the most accessible in terms of doing your research and figuring out the differences between all of these. If you're in the know, I'm sure you can interpret all of the naming conventions. But yeah, I
Yeah,
continue
it's
to
true.
enjoy my Anbernic SP flip clamshell. I still don't love the default vanilla software on there. It's not particularly intuitive. I don't know that I have the patience to fiddle and reinstall a different version for what little I'm going to use it. I think, but I'd love to see one of these that does a better out of the box experience.
Yeah, I would say that I have tinkered quite a bit with a whole raft of devices. I've tried many, many different versions of the operating systems that are flying about. I like the fact that you can apply a new operating system to a console. Imagine if you could do that with your home consoles. If you didn't like the way a device worked, you could totally overhaul it. Well, you can with these handhelds. And of all that I've tried, the Miyoo, the Onion OS on the Miyoo devices was the most pleasant. Just some kind of just quality of life things like the game switching, which lets you kind of seamlessly dive into the latest state that you're in for a raft of games that you're playing kind of visually. So you can kind of have like a Netflix style menu where you switch between your 8 or 10 games that you're playing and you dive right back in to where you were. There's no messing around with 10 different save files and different OS menus or things like that. You just dive right in.
It has
It's
some
pretty
really cool
seamless.
interfaces with it's almost like the old Xbox Blade system, but there's like one blade for each of the consoles, like the
Right.
emulated consoles on the system. But I'll have to get you to walk me through, tinkering with this one day. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. It gives you freedom and it gives you choice, which the console makers of today, it's kind of the opposite, right? It's pretty locked down. So what can you say? It's a different world there. But how about yourself, Daniel? Do you have any news from your side?
Yeah, I'm also trying to be a little more timely today after the last few episodes wavering on a lot of philosophical topics, shall we say? But one new release that I have played, I just wanted to very quickly discuss without going into a full review, is that I have been playing Ball X Pit, or Ball Times Pit, perhaps. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Developed by Kenny Sun and published by Devolver Digital. And I believe I may have discussed this previously when I played the demo. It's basically a breakout roguelite or survivor, like Vampire Survivor style game. And this does all of the things that I have complained about constantly, like all the ways I've been cynical about Balatro and the addictive qualities of that and Vampire Survivors and how burnt out I am on roguelites. it commits all of those sins, but yet I am still completely hooked by this game. It's basically is a survivor like where you have a character walking down a sort of endless scrolling corridor. Enemies are coming down from the top. You can sort of move around the bottom, and you're bouncing balls around the sides to destroy these enemies. You gradually get new balls, somewhat randomly, fairly regularly. As with Vampire Survivors, they combine into new things, but most of those are just going to fire off automatically. You can't control the order of these balls or anything. It is adding to your sort of barrage that's constantly firing off. And so very quickly it just becomes a wall of flashing lights and just bouncing balls all over the screen. There is this really primal joy to that. Like, that's something that only video games can do, is just this simulation of watching balls bounce around a screen. There's not necessarily good game design or a healthy experience, but it's captivating for sure.
Well, the closest thing I could think of in the analog gaming world is pinball, of course. A lot of those pinball games have like a multi-ball mode. Yes. So they might release 3 balls at once, and like, to me,
you have no control over that, but it's a captivating experience just watching the lights, right?
Someone who's not very good at pinball, multi-ball is like the most stressful part. So I could kind of I kind of shudder to think how it must be in ball pit.
Yeah, and there is some strategy. Like, you're not really aiming. You just sort of point in the general direction and things fire off. You want to try bounce the balls around as much as possible before they return to you, obviously. And like, there are bosses along the way that are largely going to be just a damage gate. Like, do you have enough DPS to wear down this boss, basically? Not the most sort of engaging necessarily, but it's... part of me does, like... I do have the issue where it is largely one long gamble. It's like, is this run going to survive or not? But they are relatively short runs, considering this genre does tend to be run long these days. I think 15 minutes max for a successful run is what it's going to take. Breakout as a sort of block breaking mechanic hasn't been that sort of overutilized in video games lately. Other than the original games and a couple things like Peglin, I guess, isn't quite the same thing, but it hasn't been played to death like a lot of these roguelike genres. So it's still quite novel to me. Enjoying it for now. There is a sort of satisfying meta progression layer in between where you're building out a town, but to harvest materials and build up more things in the town, you basically have to each new hero you get, you bounce them around your town to collect the resources. But you can actually get quite strategic in sort of positioning buildings to bounce them off in the right way to like maximize how many resource gathering nodes you're going to hit. So I'm actually finding that satisfying, moving things around to re-optimize between each run, because you only get to like harvest once between each run, and then you have to go and do another one. So that loop has been keeping me going for now.
Yeah, the length of a run is definitely like a kind of interesting point when you're coming into these new roguelike games, because they're sort of very, very iterative. I think 30 minutes has been the kind of de facto standard for fairly recently, but I like the shorter runs. I think like 20 minutes is really good. 15 minutes sounds great. I just get more runs in and have a more iterative time of it, because I guess there's the joy in iterating.
Yeah, on one hand, 15-minute runs does make it really easy to say, "Oh, just one," but it's also really hard to stop at just one as well. But for now, I've just will play one to start off my day and see where that goes. So I'm still enjoying it for now. I think a lot of people will grate at some of the lack of actual input you have, but you probably know just by the vague description, if you are into this game, or the people who love Balatro and Vampire Survivors, if you still need another itch to scratch, this could be it.
Nice. I will. It's definitely on my list, and I think the standard with any title that has X in the title is that you just don't say X. It's Spy Family, it's Hunter x Hunter, and it's Ball Pit. And another reason why I know this is because I listened to the trailer for Ball Pit, and they call it Ball Pit.
Oh, is that okay? We have 1,000 Times Resist recently, so that's the exception.
Well, is it 1,000 Times Resist, or is it 1,000x Resist then?
Pretty sure I've heard the times pronounced. Maybe I'll have to go double back.
What 1000X resist? Yeah, who knows?
Oh well.
All right. Any more news?
Yeah, just one final one, since this is also timely. We don't often talk about crowdfunding here. I remain pretty cynical into the general state of that, but one I wanted to shout out, this is a true sort of indie project, and also crossing the sort of omnigaming spectrum. It's called Welcome to Drowned Lake. So this is a video game on Kickstarter right now, based on the Monsterhearts TTRPG. Now that was using it was had somewhat connected to the Powered by the Apocalypse system, I'm led to believe. Maybe you can speak more to that. But designed by Avery Alder. I was actually just looking at a copy at our local game store today, who I believe is also a Canadian designer. And the team developing this video game is based largely in Vancouver, I believe, and it's set in northern BC. So, pretty soaked in Canadian Pacific Northwest vibes here. I'm quite interested to see this. It's basically in this remote town that's like filled with sort of counterculture revolutionaries who have sort of retreated to this sort of remote town during the war, but also filled now with monsters, wouldn't you know? And I mean, monsters obviously have been always provided a sort of very rich metaphor for teenage angst and other self-discovery themes, shall we say. So I think it's a pretty rich tapestry to be played with there. But it also seems like a very sort of social, cultural aware game in playing with sort of pretty deep, dark themes. But it is a queer-led studio that seems to be quite mindful of these themes and treating them respectfully and with some nuance.
Yeah, that's cool. You pointed that out on social media or our Discord or whatever, and I checked it out and I backed it. So I am interested in those topics. You're right, Monster Heart is a Powered by the Apocalypse game that I haven't played, but I've listened to some actual plays of, and it's really, really compelling. It's essentially doing a lot of what other PBTA games like Masks do, and are dealing with like, a lot of teenage energy, angst, kind of resolving the metaphor of like teenage as an age of transition, awkwardness, and kind of rebellion,
Transformation,
and mapping that to horror monsters and awkwardness and all the themes that lie therein. And I think it's a natural fit. So if you count the locally based team and the BC based setting, and you can count me in, like there's a reason why this backdrop was good enough. It's good enough for X-Files. It's good enough for Fringe and Resident Alien. It's good enough for a new video game setting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Excellent. I won't go into detail on here, but one other thing I just want to quickly mention is Mothership Month is starting now. We discussed that in detail last year during Mothership Month, so go on back and listen to that to get our sort of broader thoughts on the structure of that. I haven't really had time to look at this year's. We have Mocktober happening at the same time. Curiously, there is a big mega game happening with Mothership Month called Over/Under. It's like a Discord-based mega game, which is only running for this month during Mothership. So I recommend people go check that out if they're interested, just because that's more timely. I think we will be discussing Mothership in more detail in a couple of weeks, since we have a one-shot booked in together. So perhaps we can discuss that in a little more detail then. But I just wanted to shout that out since it is time sensitive. I think Mouse Ritter Month is also coming up next month in November.
Wow, these mega campaigns are kind of annualizing now, where it's like it might as well be FIFA or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's generally a good thing. Like, the more buzz you can do for your indie game, the better. And you're right, we're signed up for Mothership coming up at the end of October, and even before then. I have another RPG session signed up at our very self-same friendly local game store. I will be going to Rand City Games this Friday, the October 24th, for their Halloween-themed Cypher system RPG one-shot, which everyone knows that I'm a fan of Cypher, but I want to meet other players that are enthusiastic about it. And just kind of compare. It's always fun to see how another DM does it,
exactly.
GM does it. So I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah, I was interested in that. I couldn't quite swing both, but curious to hear your report.
I'll definitely be talking about it.
Excellent. Shall we get to our main course?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's talk about the main titles. Would you like to go first, or shall I?
I guess I will go first today. Let's do that. Okay,
All
so
right.
recently talked about Mass Effect, the board game, and that got me thinking about tactical board game experiences and what I enjoy in that genre, which convinced me to dust off my Kickstarter copy of Tidal Blades 2 Rise of the Unfolders. So this is designed by Tim Eisner and Ben Eisner, who you may know from Wonderland's War. Art is by Lena Cassette and David Forrest, who are collectively known as Mr. Cuddington, a sort of husband and wife artist team, and published by Druid City Games. So this is a big box campaign sort of tactical system. You might notice that there is a 2 in the title. So the original game, the first Tidal Blades, I don't remember what the sort of subtitle for that was, but it was actually a competitive game, sort of a dice rolling worker placement game. You're sort of pushing your luck, upgrading your dice into different modes, and using that to perform challenges in this sort of arena. It was like basically the practice mode, all the heroes training up for the big sort of monster fest to come. That has now occurred in Tidal Blades 2. So this is a cooperative tactical experience. But I think it's like 18 missions over the course of the campaign. I have played 6 so far, so I'll be pretty spoiler free. I won't go into any great detail even with those 6. I have not played the full thing, but I thought with these games it's good to give a broad overview as to the introductory experience regardless. I don't want to spoil anything any deeper in. So another note is that I have mostly played this solo. I have played a few of the missions 2-player as well. Like I've sort of replayed through them with different characters, seeing how they played. The solo experience is quite interesting in that you basically do have to 2-hand it. You don't have to like 4-hand it, as in Oathsworn. So you have to have at least 2 characters, but you can play like a simplified version with one of those characters if you so wish to sort of reduce the overhead there. So that's what I've been doing. I'm mostly playing 2-handed with Tidal Blades. So just discuss briefly, I guess, the overall campaign structure. It's fairly linear. I said 18 missions or so. You will get a couple of points at which you can choose A or B. 2 people need your help. Pick which one you're going to do. Sort of bisecting paths. They very quickly reconnect. I don't think it's going to have any like. I'm sure there'll be individual effects from those choices, but it's not one where it's not a huge branching campaign in the grand scheme of it. It's going to be a fairly linear experience. You're generally going to have like several missions out abroad fighting monsters and completing various objectives before you sort of return to the city, and you're going to be sort of doing various scenarios and building up your sort of characters, getting new abilities and whatnot. Seems to be sort of roughly 3 missions, and then you return and do some more story heavy experiences. So that's been largely the loop so far. And really enjoying that. The objectives have been pretty robust, even from the first mission. Very rarely in this game has it been go and kill all the baddies on the board. It's like from the get-go, it's you have to rescue these villagers, and like how many of these villagers can you rescue within X number of rounds, basically. So it always felt a little bit like sort of Pandemic or what was it, Flashpoint Fire Rescue. So it does get very quickly out of the gate get you thinking about alternative ways of manipulating the board state, basically, rather than just rushing to baddie, hitting them as many times as you can. The tutorialization is pretty strong. It does start out pretty simple and then gradually introduce new mechanics as you go. I think that was pretty pretty accessible. I've always appreciated games that sort of onboard you in that sense. I enjoy the process of tutorialization and gradually introducing you to these systems. So I don't think it's super overwhelming starting out. The rule book is pretty good, I will say, all things considered. I would like an index is the only thing that is like trying to find particular information has been the one downside, but there is several really helpful reference sheets and reminders, and the general layout is pretty strong. The one thing I would like is a sort of index if I need to find one specific bit of information. There have been a couple of times where new information is revealed in a later scenario that isn't in the main rulebook, and that has been hard to find. I mean, Pandemic Legacy solved this from the first one of those where you had like stickers that we would add to the main rulebook. I would have liked to have seen a better solution for that, perhaps. But all things considered, I think this is a pretty accessible um, system, considering it is a much heavier game compared to like Mass Effect. And I don't think I should compare those. This is a very different scale, a very different demographic in terms of like a much more richer, broader, longer experience here. So story-wise, I think is what I'd like to cover is that this is set in their sort of realm of Naviri. You've seen 2 board games set in this world now. Is a TTRPG, which I think you were telling me is actually uses the Cypher system.
That's right. The Cypher system by Monty Cook Games. Yeah, Tidal Blades, the RPG, is using that system that I like very much.
And your cat is very excited over there.
My cat's always a hassle. What can I say?
Very excited about Cypher system. So yeah, there is a very fleshed out world that this is set in. And I was listening to, I think it was the Going Analog podcast was talking about this in an episode I was listening to today, in terms of these games that whether you have the facade setting, like whether it's just a very surface level, the world is what you're experiencing in the moment, or do you have like a deeper pool of sort of culture and reference points that even if you're not seeing it, you do feel that this is a larger world that you are exploring. And I think this Naviri Tidal Blade setting definitely does fit into that. It does feel quite rich and fleshed out. There's a lot of thought gone into the different peoples and cultures, and there's a lot of different races. It's all like weird crocodile people and axolotl people, but it doesn't feel like it's drawing on any specific real world cultures. I think that can be a trap, especially with these very sort of Pacific Island coded settings. It can feel like it's pulling on sort of Polynesian cultures. That doesn't really feel like the case here. It does feel like it's sort of creating its own sense of place. Is pretty like quippy, all things considered. Like the characters are all quipping and joking around, and it's all very light-hearted in this very Saturday morning cartoon tone. I think it does balance that really well with a sense of earnestness. It's not really memeing or like referencing other pop culture. It's very much like has tropes. Obviously, like you've got the really nerdy character, you've got the really big beefy gruff character. So they all fall under these tropes, but they feel like those are they're playing with they're obviously classic tropes for a reason, and they do have a good sense of a voice, I think, in just reading through the like quite long text blurbs before each scenario. I think those characters do come across quite well. I think as a touchstone, Avatar: The Last Airbender seems what they're going for, I think, in terms of tone here, which I've not really watched much of myself, but I know from what little I've absorbed, I think it's sort of quite similar in tone. It is quite earnest, but has a lot of moments of sort of levity and silliness, shall we say.
Yep, I've watched the whole Avatar series, and it's generally holds up. It's pretty top-notch, kind of lighthearted, but the overarching plot has a lot of depth there, and there's kind of more deeper themes like redemption and betrayal and things like that.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean,
on your side.
Yes, dueling cats. So I mean, all that out of the way, basically, to get to the real juice of this game is basically the combat and the tactics of it. Essentially, the tactics in this game use something called the Nexus grid, which is it's a 3x3 grid where you're playing cards onto, and you start out with like one card in the middle, and then you choose one card from your hand and you'll play it to one of the empty slots, and then you activate a row or column. So you'll always be activating 3 slots on your board. There are pre-printed symbols with some small abilities on the board, but you'll be covering those up and sort of crafting your own combos. And all of these cards you have will have some ability on it. It could be move 3 spaces or attack with 2 dice, or possibly both, or one or the other. Or it could be gaining some resources, or like adding a dice to another attack. There are quite a lot of different potential abilities on these cards, and then you're mixing and matching them moment to moment pretty tactically. And I think that does keep things really fresh. It's not one of those games where you sort of find your setup, you've built your character, and you're just going to execute their strongest attack every round. I mean, it's a little similar to sort of Gloomhaven and how it forces you to choose between your 2 options. Because you can never do everything you want to at one go. You kind of have to sort of you're crafting this board state to, I'm going to put my attacks down here and combo them together. I'm going to put my sort of resource generation up here and fit those together, or maybe mixing and matching. But curiously, even once you've put these abilities on the board, you can't just keep firing those off, because once a row or column is complete, once you activate a full 3 cards in a row, they clear off the board. Which does also, again, stops the game from getting stale and you're constantly having to recalculate. But it also gives this sort of breathing room and this real sense of tempo in the flow state of the the combat, in that you work up to this big attack and you've rolled 6 dice at once, you've big combo, and now you have to stop and take a breather, and everything resets a little bit, and you have to build back up. And there's this good sense of sort of momentum and almost stamina. It's a very quite natural stamina system as you sort of the peaks and valleys of how strong you are moment to moment. Yeah, I'm really enjoying playing with that system. Essentially, like you always have different options out there, and you can feel really clever in how you combine these cards in different ways.
Did you say how long the campaign was?
About 18 missions, I think. I said again, I've played 6 of those so far, and I've seen quite a lot of different mechanics and objective types within those. A couple of boss fights, but even the bosses, it's not just reduce the boss's HP pool. There's usually been a few really interesting twists on how you go about reducing those pools. Like you might have to go and activate something somewhere else on the board to like take down a shield in some fashion, shall we say, or attack them in very particular ways. You have to be in the right spot on the board to do so. So I think it's really clever in keeping both your broad objectives interesting and different, and also how you're engaging in those systems moment to moment quite different. The other thing is that there's also like the initiative system, basically. So there is like an initiative track that each character is going to start out somewhere on the board, and the monsters all start somewhere on this track. But every card you play will also modify that in some way. It could be either up or down 1 or 2 spaces at a time, and so you can manipulate that. And I've been thinking a lot about that in terms of Final Fantasy Tactics, and how really engaging that, just the ability to manipulate the turn order can really explode out your options. Like, do you hang back and see what the enemy's going to do and react to them, or wait for them to move closer and then attack them, or are you going to go really fast to rush in and wear them down before they have a chance to fire off that mega ability? There's a lot of room for manipulating that state and using that again in clever ways. None of this is fully deterministic. There is always a lot of wiggle room, because you have to commit to that before you know what card the monsters are going to use and where they're going to be on that initiative track directly. There's also, obviously, you're rolling dice when you attack, so you never know exactly how much damage you're going to do. So I think this balance is a really fascinating way of giving you a lot of options, a lot of opportunities for being clever and creative, but also not being able to math out everything. So this has been a really good balance, I think, so far. I'm excited to continue into it, and I don't think I would get through it if I wasn't playing it solo, to be honest. It is quite hard to get together a group for these campaign games lately. But no, I'm having a blast with Tidal Blades so far. I hoped to run you through it sometime and compare your thoughts, but we may still do that sometime.
Is there, I suppose if you're controlling multiple characters, you can just kind of let another human control the other characters that are not being used?
You could just jump into my campaign in the middle, and I'll just run you through it, or you can start a new campaign. The way the components are used, you can basically have a character sheet that you fill in of all the stats and things as you progress. You are getting quite a lot of progression layers. There's like 5 different systems to improve over the course of the game. Like there's the cards themselves, obviously. There's some stats that you spend resources. Like you can spend resources for moving or for basically boosting your dice rolls in some fashion, and like your maximum for those is increasing over the course of the game. There's fame you're collecting, which I think is like an end game score system. There's fruit that you use to buy items. Like, is these items that you can also basically add to the cards to, like, again, further customize what each space in this board is doing. There's regular XP that you can use to buy new cards. There's a lot of different tracks and things you're pushing in this game. So it always feels like you're making progress somewhere.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll definitely give that a shot.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing my campaign of Tidal Blades 2.
Nice. All right. Yeah, that looked like a pretty giant box when I saw it on your table last time I was at your place.
It is quite overwhelming, like the size of it. It can be intimidating seeing these giant things, and most people won't have a lot of time for playing campaigns like this or having the space on their shelf. I do think this is fairly accessible considering how large it is. It's a fairly maximalist approach to like all the components and everything. Though I will say like the default box uses standees. I have the extra miniatures board box of miniatures for the game, but the regular game just has standees, which I think is fine for most people.
Very cool. Okay. Shall we move on to my game?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I am covering another JRPG. That's the game of the moment. I promise next game I will shake things up.
We're at real risk of becoming a retro game podcast here.
Are retro games so bad? No.
We're not beholden to any patrons or sponsors, so we can talk about whatever we want.
Exactly. We play what we want. All right. So the game I'm talking about today is a sequel to a game we've covered a little bit in the past. This is Phantasy Star 2. Mm-hmm. So, of course, this is the 16-bit sequel to the 8-bit first entry from the Sega Master System. This one was released in 1989 in Japan for the Sega Mega Drive, and in 1990 for the Genesis in North America and the Mega Drive in Europe. So this game holds a special place in my heart. In fact, I think we talked about it a little bit during our 100 Top Game coverage a little while ago for our 100th episode spectacular. I wanted to just kind of go deeper into kind of why this game is so special to me. So this game, holds up in a lot of ways. It actually features, I just checked this out recently, it features some pretty notable names. So probably most notable of the players who participated in the creation of this game is one Yuji Naka, who is the creator, co-creator of the Sonic the Hedgehog, the entire series. He was a programmer, producer of Phantasy Star 2, and perhaps some of the earlier ones as well. He participated in the whole series. The director of this game, director-writer, is one Chieko Aoki. Artist Ryoko Kodama, who worked on Alex Kidd, other games in the Phantasy Star series, Seventh Dragon, Sonic the Hedgehog, and the Dreamcast kind of darling Skies of Arcadia, the one with the Sky Pirates that everyone loves, and composer Tokuhiko Uabo. And if you're listening carefully there, the majority of those team members were women. Which
quite unusual for its time.
Yeah, it's not unheard of to have, women team members in game development. We talked about Final Fantasy the other day, and I was reading the feature on the pixel artist for that. It was quite notable. But having such a sizable chunk, even the majority of the key players being women, is pretty notable. And I think that gives the series a bit of its unique flair. Definitely plays into some of the character design and the artistic treatment Just really, really unique compared to a lot of kind of standard fare coming out on the Super Nintendo and the Genesis at the time. So this game came out when I was 10 or 11, so it was squarely kind of right in my peak fantasy loving game mode. So I guess I didn't realize that this was a sequel. I came back to it later. I probably played the first one. I played the first one a lot less than number two. So number two is pretty strong in my mind. Just everything right down to its like color palette. Just something about the Sega Genesis color palette was just really appealing to me. It seemed a little bit darker, a little bit more saturated than the Super Nintendo, which had very kind of like primary colors, kind of like me as a recovering Sega kid. I thought it was just a little bit too preschool, kind of my first console mode. Even the excellent the excellent Super Mario World, it just had a little bit of a kiddie mode, and this one doesn't have that. It's, I guess, tame by today's standard, but it has some pretty like horrific monsters. It has guns, it has weapons, it has like pretty like devious monsters, robots, kind of scary stuff. If for very much younger kids.
Clowns.
Yeah,
don't mess with the clone clown.
for sure. There's a pretty clown-looking kind of Jack Nicholson kind of Joker working in the clone facility in every town, as I recall. Yeah, that reminds me. This game has cutscenes. It has like an intro kind of movie.
Yeah, I was surprised by
engine.
how much story is in this. I mean, to be clear, I've been playing this as well. I mentioned when I finished Final Fantasy that I was quite keen to get back to this series. And yeah, like it starts out the gate with quite a long sort of text crawl, curiously in like first person. So it's obviously trying to fill a bit of a player stand-in role there. I didn't even realize that there was a default name to the character.
Yeah, the default name is unfortunately called Rolf, which reminds me of the Nazi character from Sound of Music.
Oh, I was thinking of the Muppet.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, I guess there's that as well. So there's Rolf, and then there's another main character called Rudo.
Yeah,
so I
I
always
got
get those
confused
mixed
there.
up. So I basically rename the protagonist every time. They're using my default protagonist stand-in name, which is Bad, B-A-D. That's been a long time name for me. But yeah, the artwork is very much right along the lines of contemporary anime at the time. So the character art, everything from not just the key players, but like the people that are working at the inn or the hospital or the item shop. They have these like quite colorful, pretty high res,
Really expressive
anime-inspired art.
characters that were quite reminiscent of a lot of anime characters at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I would make the direct comparison to, contemporary anime of the time, the 1990s Macross, Dirty Pair,
Okay.
sci-fi art like that. But it really gets you in the mood, and me as a Japanophile, even from that age, I really latched onto that. It was more exotic to me than the kind of the Western kind of tropes of Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, which were kind of the standard in role-playing games. So that's another reason why this game is very special to me. So this story-wise, this takes place 1,000 years after Phantasy Star 1. Don't worry, you don't have to play Phantasy Star 1. The
You
connections are very rudimentary. I mean, you should play Phantasy Star 1. Yes, true, but there's not any direct parallels.
Yeah.
There's just some references. The first events of the first game are treated more like myth in this title, so the connections are very, very loose. But what stands out is the recurrence of these planet names. So there's the planet of Mota, Palma, things like that. In fact, it's quite hilarious. In one screenshot, I just failed to take it when I played it today, but they called the same planet Parma, and Palma, all in the span of like one or two screens. So they were having some localization issues, let's just say.
Right.
So, despite that, the story comes along. When it comes in, it's very brisk, but the scenarios are really cool. Like instead of going into dungeons, this game you're going into like massive like abandoned prisons, computer facilities.
Bio
You're going
research
into
labs.
research labs, and kind of this string of larger dungeons that I've been going through recently, which is sort of in the middle of the game. I'm about 2/3 into the game. Are featured these dams that are literally controlling water systems, but they're all controlled by a primary computer. So the goal is to survive the monsters, go through the maze of twisting corridors until you find the computer, and then disable the dam so the water can flow. So very different than the fantasy fare of the contemporary games, story-wise, but mechanically you could easily transition to this if you're more familiar with Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. How do you compare this system-wise to those other games?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot heavier on the story, a lot darker in the story too. I've already had a couple of moments spoiled, but quite early on there is a really dark moment with you basically have to rescue this girl who's being held hostage because her father is like basically guarding a bridge and won't let you cross, but things get confusing, and he ends up killing her out of mistake, not realizing who she is. And in his grief, they both explode. And it's really dark, tragic moment that happens really fast, very blink and you miss it. But it's playing with some pretty heavy themes.
Right, but at that same time, this is a kind of it's a kind of a reference to that moment early in Final Fantasy, right? The whole saving of the princess, which you resolve in the first hour or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but mechanically, it serves the same purpose. It's an early progress gate,
right,
literally, that prevents you from moving into a new area of the world. But the way they treat the story is totally much darker, and sort of fits with what the Sega Genesis was trying to do at the time. The Sega does what Nintendo don't. That was the marketing, at least from the North American.
Edgy.
Exactly. That was the start of the 1990s. This was a whole thing. In truth, in fact, this game, it just is another game in the long tradition of JRPGs, which are covered in this fine book, which I've been starting to read. Fight Magic Items by Aidan Mohair, who is one half of the cast of podcast series Fun Factor, which I've been listening to.
Yeah, I've read that book. I talked about it a couple of months ago, I think it was. Yeah.
Right. I'm enjoying it quite a bit, and it's been useful getting background on these games.
Yeah, useful to have a sort of broader context on what else is happening around the time that these games were coming out.
Right. So, what was interesting to me in direct comparison between Phantasy Star 2 and 1 is that I thought the dungeons in Phantasy Star 1, especially near the end of the game, were quite devious. Almost brutal in their perverse difficulty. There were a lot of hidden trapdoors. There were the dungeons were literally very massive. And I should say another big difference between this game and last is that the dungeons are no longer first person like they are in games like Wizardry. In this game, they are top down, so very much more in line with the other games like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy that I mentioned. But the combat sticks to the third person kind of behind the characters very much like Dragon Quest always did.
Yeah, I did really enjoy that first-person combat. I reviewed that a couple of months ago. It may have been in the same episode from what I recall. But I quite enjoyed the sort of immersive level of the exploring the dungeons, and then the sort of very seamlessly come into the combat. The monsters just appear in the same screen as you're walking through these dungeons. And I can see where they may have run out of things they could potentially do with that system with the hardware that they had. It's hard to innovate on that system and keep it fresh. It was quite tricky. I was mapping out those dungeons and had quite a lot of fun doing that. Here, it's these dungeons in Phantasy Star 2 are similarly devious. They are still trying to trick you and confuse you, but I found it a lot harder to map just because it's top down. They're not on a grid. They're really odd shapes and they sort of twist and turn in really confusing ways, and they all kind of look the same. They look really cool, the dungeons, like they're quite evocative, but it's really easy to get lost and very hard to track even when you're taking notes what you're doing here because they loop around. When you teleport between layers, you're not sure if you're going up or down. Like you might be returning to the previous layer that you were on, or you might be going up to a new layer. You're not sure.
Well, those teleport panels, which act very much like the staircases in Final Fantasy, for instance, do have a directional arrow
Oh,
that
I
are on them.
that.
I don't know if you noticed that, but there's arrows either going in or out.
Oh,
And
there you
those,
go. Okay.
those indicate whether you're going up or down. And of
Okay.
course, like Phantasy Star 1, you can fall through pits, but you see them a mile away.
And sometimes you need
in
to.
this version. Exactly. There are. They teach you really early on, maybe even in the first dungeon, that you have to jump into the pits to fall down into the levels below and
Feels
to
like that
access
Ocarina
certain
of
rooms.
Time moment where you have to like jump down to break the spider web, right?
Yep, that's right. They're establishing these things way back. I found that the dungeons are pretty manageable, especially later on. Like I said, I'm only about halfway in or 2/3 in. But the four dams, for instance, are mostly. I didn't map any of them, played through them, mostly keeping it within my head. And maybe I just jive with the way that these dungeons are laid out. Another really cool thing about this game is that it's leveraging the power of 16-bit. It has this parallax effect that's going on in a lot of the
In the
dungeons.
foreground, which is quite
Yes.
unusual. Yeah.
Right. Like I mentioned, because these are more like technological facilities like dams or computer facilities, you see like water pipes or like electrical lines in the foreground, and they're moving in parallax, which means at a different speed from the walking of the character. So it adds a lot of visual interest and makes what the dungeon layouts are quite, dry, just like little mazes, but it adds a lot of dynamism and always keeps me kind of engaged and feeling like I'm really there. And that's, what the power of 16-bit could let you do in comparison to those earlier games. So I really like that a lot. It works much better with patterned machine-like devices like pipes or things like that. They do a similar effect with like mist in one of the later levels that's more organic, but it doesn't work quite as well. It comes off a little cheesy. So that's another aspect that I enjoy about those dungeons. There are some complaints though. So there are a lot of things I love about this game. I still love it. It's one of the best JRPGs in my opinion. But my biggest complaints I have about this game is this is a 35-year-old game, mind you. Is the UI. The menu system is archaic. Basically, there's one button to bring up the menu, and you have to go through that one menu to access anything. The status of the characters is not visible at any time except 3 levels into a menu or during combat. So I just want to know what the health of my characters is doing. I don't know what the health of my character is while I'm in the items menu. So if I don't remember what the health of one of my 4 characters is 3 screens ago, then I just have to blindly choose a character to apply it to, and it doesn't tell me what their HP is when I'm applying a healing potion.
And if you're trying to heal multiple characters, you have like I usually use the magic spells. Like you go into the spell menu, select heal, select the character, and it sets you back to the beginning. Okay, well I want to heal the second character. I have to do that all over again. Open the menu, go into the magic. It resets every time you do a spell.
Yeah, that's right. Everything is like five clicks deep when it could have been 1 click forward, 1 click back. It does the very same thing. You can't buy more than 1 copy of any item at a given time. Even when I want to buy eight healing potions, I have to go into the menu and click 3 times, 8 times. So that's incredibly frustrating. Managing the inventory of these characters is actually a little bit of a mini game and is kind of one of the kind of limiting factors because unlike a lot of games like Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy, there's no shared inventory. every character can only carry what they can carry.
Well, I believe the original Final Fantasy was also like this. The Pixel remaster changed that, but the original one also had the character-based inventory.
Right. And this game series, like Final Fantasy, has weird names for the magical spells. I feel like it works. It somehow works for me in the fantasy, in the science fiction setting, because it sounds like these are strange space elements or things like that. For me, the weird names like Foy and Gires totally work. You have to memorize what these things are. I mean, I guess you can connect res and resurrection, although it doesn't resurrect, it heals. But you make these mental connections in your mind, and there's a sort of naming convention that stands for like the medium strength of that spell and then the ultimate strength of that spell. So that's something you just have to do. That's kind of a standard for that age of RPG.
Some of them felt like they were sort of a phonetic language. It reads a little bit like Japanese, some of the names of these, and I'm wondering if it was like read better as a Japanese speaker, perhaps.
Yeah, probably. And there's some of the items work like there's something called sack, S-A-K, which you sacrifice your life of the healer to give life to other characters.
And there's Sa, which you heals all your characters. Don't get those two confused.
Right, yeah. So, and there's no help text to remind you of what those things are. I feel like that's one of those cheats that old school games did, is they either you did it so that you would have to buy a legitimate copy and you'd have a manual with you, or it wanted you to make your own notes.
Well, here's the thing, though. In researching this game, buying this game in North America, at least, it came with a 100-page guide, basically, that included maps to all of the dungeons. It didn't include the description of the spells, but it wasn't quite as robust as the Final Fantasy manual, but it was quite detailed. And I've sort of given up on trying to take my own notes. I think I'm just going to use that. Since it was official, it was included when you bought the game.
Yeah, I think that was, like we established in the Final Fantasy episode, that was just a thing that they did. Not only did they have manuals back in the day, but with RPGs specifically, on console, they had no faith that players would be able to figure it out on their own. It's just a different
experience.
Yeah, a different style of gameplay. Another factor is sort of to do with the weapons. It's very inconsistent. I don't know what weapon is stronger. Unlike modern day UIs, they don't tell you how your stats improve before you buy the item. So you just have to hope that it works with the character. It does warn you. If you say, okay, you want to buy the ceramic armor? Sure.
You jerk.
Yeah, exactly. Which character you want me to apply this to? And if it's suitable, then it's fine. But if it doesn't work, then they literally mock you for trying to buy it.
And I mean, when you equip them, it will show you that your stat goes up, but it won't show you if, say, oh, this is a boomerang that hits multiple enemies. I think that's Dragon Quest did a similar thing where some weapons will hit multiple groups or all enemies instead of just one, but that's not always clear. It's a lot of experimentation. The biggest thing for me is just not knowing who can equip what, especially if you get if you find a boomerang in a chest in a dungeon. Oh, who can equip this? Going through all your characters one at a time. You have to send it to that character each time just to see if they can use it.
Yeah, you mentioned a good point. The cast in this game is doing something that later entries in series like Final Fantasy would eventually get to, but this game was doing quite early on. This game features a cast of, I think,
eight
characters. You start with two. You start with the aforementioned Rolf. And his companion, sort of a human biomonster hybrid called Nay. Yep, she's your titular cat girl who's wearing a bunny outfit or whatever, very scantily clad. And the Western art for this is done in the Boris Vallejo style. It's just ridiculous. The characters look nothing like
I haven't seen it.
their anime-inspired artwork does. But all these characters are really interesting. They play quite differently from each other. They all feature just a paragraph of backstory, but the character who is good at fighting robots is a mechanic. So there's at least some thought into the theming of this.
They all have a distinct role. They play quite differently. There's not a lot of character once you get them. They give you a lot of character up front, and then there's not really much interaction beyond that I've seen so far. Right. Maybe that changes later.
No, from what I've seen, that's essentially true. You have a lot of interaction, obviously, with your primary character, Rolf, and with Nay, who, they seed into your party right from the beginning, right? So you naturally have a tight connection with her. And this is a weakness of the game, but the characters, you don't just find them in a new town that you visit, like a lot of later games would. They just show up at your house, like your house is like the Adventurers Play Clubhouse or something like that. So you've been out adventuring, you have to go back to the very first town, which grants you, like, the headquarters for your organization exists there, so there's other reasons to go. But you have to go back to your house, and they don't tell you when they will show up. You don't get SMS messages or anything like that. It's just, if you don't go back to your house for a long time, which I would forgive you if you're a standard JRPG player, why would you ever go back to your house? But you should go back to your house in this game, because you might have 5 side characters waiting for you to be recruited into your party.
It's easy to go through the first dungeon, like, kneecapping yourself with only 2 characters when you could have, like, 4 of them. It's I do like the loop once you realize that it's there, but it's not very clear that that is a loop that you need to engage with.
Yeah, so I do like how varied the characters are. Like you said, there's the kind of your standard hunter with guns. There's like a kind of a medic character. There's a kind of a wizard character. There's that anti-robot character. And there's this character that can shoot those boomerangs that you can affect multiple monsters. By the way, one thing we forgot to mention was that in the first battle system, there was only ever one monster on screen. Do you remember that?
Vaguely. Oh, one would represent multiples, but you only see
Exactly.
one. Yeah.
There might be like 7 ghosts or banshees or whatever, but you'd only see one piece of artwork. This time you will have things like 3 banshees and 1 giant toad.
I did find the combat really confusing here, though, because it jumps to, like, this weird virtual space, like, from this third-person perspective. The characters are constantly flickering on and off the screen. Like, you'll see their backs when they get attacked, but, like, lined up with different parts of the screen. Then they'll flash forward when they're attacking a monster, and, like, the numbers are just blink and you miss them, and it's like a lot of information just flashing on and off constantly. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah, that standard like grid lines was very much like the 90s. It's like even the Master System box art had that grid line baked into it. It's like, this is the 90s if you're playing this. So I really like it. It naturally takes me back. So this game has flaws, but it has so many good things going for it. Not the least of which is the innovative setting compared to a lot of tired fantasy RPGs. This one has AI. It has a climate control system that is going on the fritz. It's creating these bio monsters. So there's like a legitimate reason why there's monsters roaming the land. There's a certain point where you like take out some of the bio control, and then now you're labeled as terrorists. So they're sending out these like security robots to chase after you, and that totally changes up the type of monsters that you fight. So you gain access to vehicles, of course, and that'll let you hit over land and things like that. But then you can access the dam systems. You get these access cards, and it lets you go past doors, or you get dynamite and blow things up. So there's a lot of fun things that you can do in this game beyond that. And I would say it's still very playable to this day. 35 years later. Obviously, save states and fast forward improve things greatly, but I would say you don't need it. This game is fairly generous with its saves. There's a place to save in every town, and that adds to kind of the tension, like we were talking about with Alex last episode about, can I make it back to town before my party is wiped out?
It can be quite punishing when you don't make it back, if you get surprised. As I realized, is a sleep debuff enemies can cast on you, and which is usually, they'll wake up after a few turns. No, if your characters fall asleep and everyone's asleep, it's an instant game over screen, and like you might just lose an hour of gameplay and have to go back and redo that whole dungeon. I mean, these are mistakes you'll probably only learn once. The other one being if you go to a dungeon and forget to take a teleport pipe with you. That's a mistake you'll probably only make once, and then they are hard lessons to learn. But once you get into that loop, you do find ways around those punishing systems. But there are traps to fall into here.
Yeah, this game thankfully has those devices that allow you to instantly escape the dungeon, and another one that lets you instantly teleport back to the most recent town you visited. So those are literal lifesavers. Okay, so the last thing I'll end this on is that, like I said, it's still quite playable, but there have been other versions throughout the ages. It was featured, Phantasy Star 2 was re-released in the Sega Genesis Mini 2 hardware release in October 2022. And it was ported by M2, notable remake house, and it featured some quality of life improvements. We talked about remakes and remasters just last episode, and this game did a couple of tweaks. It allowed you to walk faster, and it sped up combat, and it increased the amount of EXP, experience points that is, and meseta, which is the in-game currency. So all of these are obviously efforts to decrease the amount of grind. This game easily, if you have one of these retro handhelds, is great for just watching TV and having background game. So I highly encourage anyone to check it out if you have. You could even play this on. I think there's Android and iPhone versions as well. So
there
there's
was
so many ways to get it.
They were on Nintendo Online as of a year or so ago, and then mysteriously disappeared with no warning. The first one did have a remaster on the Switch, but the second one doesn't. It's not quite as accessible, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm sure you can find it out there somewhere, but there isn't a super accessible way on consoles, at least.
Yeah, in my opinion, this game is a classic. It's well worth checking out and stands up among some of those great Super Nintendo RPGs that you may have fond memories of. And this is still early on. They would go on to release, I think, 2 more Phantasy Stars just on the Sega Genesis alone, which I never got to play because I was always meaning to beat this one. So I'm well on my way to do that with this version, and I'm just enjoying every moment.
I know the third one is quite maligned. The fourth one has a very good reputation. I mean, obviously there's the online games as well. I just was recently reading up this week. There are fan-made servers basically for the online games that I've heard some buzz that are apparently still quite good. Still a good community around. So I've been curious to poke at those sometime.
It just reminded me that, like, I think Phantasy Star Online also had a 25-year anniversary recently. So it's like that old.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. It does have a few quirks. I couldn't quite get into it quite as much as the first one. I'm actually surprised. I think so far I still prefer one. Something about the movement in this game. It's like because your character isn't centered. You have to move to the edge of the screen before it starts to scroll, and it's quite clunky in that way. And like after each combat, like the direction you're facing is reset, so you can forget which direction you were going in the dungeon. So I know. Few quibbles with this. I do respect that they made quite a few changes with the original game. A lot of innovation in storytelling and character. We didn't mention, like, of those 8 characters, half are women, which is pretty different for the time as well. So yeah, a lot of character and story in this game, considering what else was coming out in this genre around that time.
Yeah, and I don't want to maybe give away a painful spoiler, but one of those characters is not going to last
Bit of
until
an
the end of the
Aerith moment,
story.
it sounds like. Yeah.
Exactly. It was doing it so early. Phantasy Star 2. All right, but I've talked at length. I've gushed about this fantastic game. Shall we move on into another course?
Yes. Why don't you bring us some dessert, Mark?
Okay, yeah, I'll start us off. I'll do a quick one. This time around, it's a novel. I don't read a lot of novels in my year, but I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This is called, the title is The Night of Baba Yaga. So this is a novel from 2020, originally, and it was published in English for the first time in 2024 because this is a Japanese authored novel. Author's name is Akira Otani. So it's published by Soho Press. So this story is quite short. I can't really tell because it comes in this lovely hardcover and of a decent size. I guess the typeface must be really large because it's only about 200 pages or so. But this novel, it just rips. It just rips from beginning to end. I think I read it in two seatings over the course of a weekend or definitely a week. This content warning: this story is violent. There is intense gore. There's violent action. This is kind of like a action movie if they wrote a novel form of it. There's child abuse. There's some sexual violence. There's some dark subject matter, but this game will feel very naturally at home if you are an enjoyer of certainly like Yakuza movies of the Takashi Miike variety, or even like video games like the Yakuza, like a Dragon series. You'll probably enjoy this. Very similar storylines, but this so much of my headspace is very very cinematic reading this story, and I was thinking, why isn't this a manga? Why isn't this a movie? And there's a couple of reasons why it's not. It does some kind of not exactly like magical realism, but it does a couple of things I don't think they can do in a visual medium, because about 2/3 into the story, there's this like holy cow moment that had me like rereading the same paragraph like 6 times over. Is like, did that really happen? And they did. Other things that I will mention about this story is the characters are really unique. It's a kind of a odd couple story. The story is about, I mentioned Yakuza. Basically, there's this kind of like wild, kind of feral woman who I guess takes on the role of the titular Baba Yaga. She's just kind of like this like burly fighter, and it's not very standard for Japanese media to feature kind of like just really like tough kind of butch women, and this one, it definitely kind of has the most butch, most tough woman you could think of. Like, this person is like right up there with the characters from the Yakuza video game series. Like, can lay down some beats, and she does right from the beginning. And she, I don't know, runs afoul of the Yakuza, and it takes like 8 men to take her down or something like that. And she gets pulled into the Yakuza boss, and they say, we'll let you go, or we'll go easy on you, we'll let you live, but you have to become the bodyguard for our boss's daughter, boss's only child, whose daughter. So the Yakuza boss's daughter, which I understand is fairly common in organized crime in Japan, is like they're not really connected to the parents' line of work. Obviously, they live lives of luxury. They might go to like prestigious schools and things like that, and I think everyone knows that they're connected to organized crime, but they can lead very different lives.
Plausible deniability.
Right. Yeah. And, you can't always blame the sins of the father on the child. Anyways, so the daughter is this kind of prim and proper, secluded kind of type, very shy and naive. And you're paired up with this really butch brick house of a action star protagonist. So it's just naturally fascinating relationship, and it's just a rip-roaring action movie from start to the end. And the ending is to be experienced as well. So this is all I can say about The Night of Baba Yaga. Highly, highly recommended. Even if you don't read a lot of novels, if you like video games and action movies, like this, you won't be able to put it down. This is super exciting stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. Would you call it a horror book, or is it more action focused?
There's nothing fantastical about this story. There are things that are surprising about the story, but it's very like, there's no like metaphysics. There is like hints of it. The Baba Yaga is a story that the main character was told. So it's not a real. It's not like, I'm a vampire or something like that. It's more metaphysical, but like the primary character kind of takes on the role of some of these stories that she heard as a child.
Cool. Okay, well, I mean, speaking of October, and I've recently, my wife and I have been watching through some scary movies still, and having recently replayed Alien Isolation and then complained about Alien Earth recently on the podcast, I decided to finally get off my list. I've been meaning to do this for the last several years, but we finally watched Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, the much maligned sequels. And surprised to say, they both rock. Like, I might be in the minority here, but I loved both of these for quite different reasons. Alien 3, I mean, it was directed by David Fincher. I think this was actually his directorial debut, and he apparently had a terrible time with the production, a lot of studio interference. For what it's worth, I did watch the assembly cut, which wasn't a director's cut. It was sort of based on his initial intentions. So haven't seen the theatrical version, but it's still a lot to love here. It does revert from aliens. It goes back to like just it's a single alien, and there's all these reasons why that like it's on a prison planet, so there's no weapons, so they can't fight it. So it just goes back to the dread of a single alien that you can't deal with, and it's slowly picking everyone off one at a time. Very nihilistic film in many ways, but I think it's also has the best sense of character across all four films. I mean, even in the original, although there wasn't a lot of depth to many of the characters, Ripley herself didn't get much limelight until like the latter half of that film, and the second one was just. I like aliens, but the colonial marines don't. You can't say they have much depth. But here, Ripley, I think he's her most interesting, and there's a great cast of supporting characters. I mean, it's a men's only prison. It is playing with a lot of themes of sort of toxic masculinity that's sort of driven to the extent of like religious fervor, basically. But you have Charles Dance playing a really excellent character. Like this is a rare, unexpected experience of being sad to see Charles Dance die in a film. Spoilers, but it's pretty much par for the course in Aliens. But yeah, he's great, and it's just a quite nuanced take on these characters and the bringing a little more dread back to the Alien franchise. I did really enjoy that. My wife actually says it's her favorite of the four films. Alien 4, or sorry, Alien Resurrection, definitely the ugly duck of of the series. I think is still interesting in some quite unique ways. This is directed by Jean-Pierre Junot, who most people would know from Amélie. I mean, I am actually a big fan of his, I think maybe in his first film, or one of the first, called Delicatessen, which, if you've seen that, you know that he does really good, has a great sense of this grunginess and like just really dank, wet environments, things sort of really cobbled together and falling apart, which is kind of perfect for the Alien franchise. I mean, look, it gets back to that sort of weird psychosexuality of Giga that was there from the get-go, right? And just fills the movie with like these just perverted weirdos. I mean, Brad Dourif, obviously, he's got to be there, but a bunch of other just weird characters who are just a little too obsessed with the aliens, basically. And it's very messy. It's very sloppy in multiple ways. It is. I mean, I've complained a bunch about Joss Whedon writing on here. This is literally written by Joss Whedon, and you can see the prototypes of a lot of Firefly characters here. Ripley is basically turned into River from Firefly in ways I don't love. Like she's a clone, and so it's like removed from humanity. She's not quite like the same person, but she's acting in this weird sort of lobotomized sense. Like she's just the embodiment of sort of badassdom without much character depth, I don't think. But the setting and the set design and the structure is really is fantastic to look at. Like all the models, a lot of cool shots of like spaceship models, and the physical sets just dripping with weird fluids is a lot of fun here. So definitely a lot more pulpy and fun, question mark, compared to the other films, but unique in its own way. And people complain that it's not the same, but look, even Aliens was not the same as the original film. This has always been a film series that has reinvented itself and evolved in new ways. So it's fascinating to see different takes on them. I think that I would put both of these above Aliens, to be honest. And I like Aliens, But the hoorah colonial marine attitude and the sort of nuclear family ending don't do a lot for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I've watched all four of those films that you mentioned, and I agree. You know, like that series, I think what keeps it fresh is its constant reinvention,
Hmm.
and also that you know it's not exact. Those aren't supposed to be grounded films, right? It a lot of the great aspects of these films are these fantastic set pieces, a
Hmm.
lot of mood and a lot of tone. You can call them tone poems if you want to. Number two is the odd one of that whole set because it's like the most kind of balls out action movie. It's the kind of the
Hmm.
most like commercial and as a result successful of the bunch. But three and four, I don't remember a lot of detail, but I remember moments and I remember like the feelings of watching along in a couple of really tense scenes. So they succeeded to a point certainly,
Hmm.
and I think they established all different aspects of this kind of universe, and really the monsters of the star, and they all have their unique permutations, which I enjoy. They're the star just as much as Sigourney Weaver is.
Oh yeah, even if they're only on the screen for a few minutes per movie. But yeah, I definitely think it's revisiting these, especially sort of removed from expectation, and like the series has never been one thing, and just let each exist in its own little weird world.
Agree. Here, here. Just like entries in a long-running RPG series.
Precisely. Okay, shall we close the book there?
Let's do it. All right. Well, I want to thank our audience for listening to us. Once again, we cover a smattering of all kinds of genres, all kinds of media, and you still listen to us. So thank you so much for that. That said, I'd really love to hear your feedback about your favorite entry in the Alien series, your opinion about 80s and 90s JRPGs. Do you like the cipher system? There's so much we can talk about, so I'd love to hear feedback. You can, reach out to us at our various social medias. Daniel, want to tell the listeners what those are?
Do you like watching balls bouncing on a screen? Yeah, you can contact us at omnigamersclub@gmail.com or at our website, omnigamers.club. You can also find us both at Blue Sky. There's an Omnigamers Club account there, and you can find me at Board Game Feast.
And I'm Mark Yuasa, MARKYUASA. And of course, you can always check out our episodes on our newer episodes on YouTube. We put those out every episode that comes out. If you want to listen to our older first, I don't know what number, dozens of episodes, they're only in audio form. Check those out in a podcatcher of your choice.
I know there's been a lot of complaints these days about the various streaming platforms, and like YouTube is now showing some questionable ads and sort of AI summaries and whatnot, for example. But you know what? They can never take podcasts from us.
That's right. Podcasts are one of the few free formats that are out there. I know that there's networks out there. Somehow, no one's knocked on our door to join their podcast network. Maybe we'll sell out one day, but not yet.
So we'll be firing away on the ham radio after society has ended. So we'll see.
That's right. We're going to be playing these games and talking about them anyways. Might as well share them with other game lovers out there in the world.
Yep.
Well, anything else, Daniel?
I think that's it. So once again, to all you listening, remember to have a balanced diet of gaming.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.